So this morning we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Ben Cope from Intel, who's going to be talking to us about the Open AV Cloud Initiative. This is something that I think is very relevant for us, some things that we've talked about at the conference in the past. This chance opportunity for the talk actually came out on the Avixa ISE Run Club this year when Ben and I were running down the Barcelona beachfront and got talking about this, and it sounded like a great opportunity to bring Ben, introduce him to LTSMG and what we do, and have him talk about the Open AV Cloud Initiative from Intel's perspective. So Ben, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so firstly, thank you to Matt and LTSMG for inviting me to talk here. It's been a pleasure to listen to some of the talks and the exhibits the last day or so and learn more about LTSMG. So, as Matt said, I'm going to talk to you about Open AV Cloud. Credit to Little Grossman from Excite who helped me put the slides together for this. So I want to give her credit for that. And as Matt said, I'll sort of try and give a bit of perspective as to why we're involved with this as Intel as I go through and some of the motivations I see for this initiative. And actually, it was a really nice tee-up in the panel session yesterday where it was talked about at the end that one of the next steps for Oxford was looking at a software platform that could manage all the devices from sort of a single pane of glass. And that's kind of very much about what the spirit of this initiative will help unlock in the future. So the sort of core idea of Open AV Cloud is really to promote openness in APIs. Encouraging vendors to publish, open their APIs, and pursue some best practices in doing so in the approach and open. And I'll explain a bit more about that as we go through. So what is it? I see Open AV Cloud as sort of a special interest group, and it's an industry-wide initiative that's bringing together AV manufacturers and technology providers on a common goal, which is this sort of standardized approach to connectivity and APIs in openness, and we'll see that as we go through. And the vision here is that really you help open up the management and interoperability of devices in AV. And if I look at this from sort of the perspective as how I look at Pro AV, one thing we see is this, that's been talked about for a long time at ISE and other shows, is this convergence of AV and IT. And I think this is very much in support of that in sort of promoting openness, which I think helps simplify and grow the ecosystem. So here's a sort of list of all the existing members, and actually I noted that the list is continually growing, and actually since these slides were put together, Hudley, who I know is here, has joined. So their logo isn't quite on here yet, but you see quite a range of people in the ecosystem here. We join as sort of industry partners and advisors. You sort of see the manufacturers in the middle here, and I know this is something that sort of LTSMG are looking to join as a supporter as well, which is great to hear. So in the manufacturers sort of signing up to this, what are they committing to? So in terms of their customers, they're committing to provide that flexibility and openness, to really help promote, that avoiding that sort of vendor lock-in of a single person. They're committing to provide openness in APIs, so that means it doesn't necessarily mean everyone writes their APIs in exactly the same way, but they are they're making them open so that people who provide management software platforms can easily integrate to them. So sometimes in the past, people may have needed like a special relationship with a vendor to be able to integrate with their APIs. This is really promoting that openness. To adhere to common best practices, and we'll see this in the technical activities a bit later on areas such as security and privacy, so that there's some commonality there. Industry-wide inclusion, so this is an initiative that's open to everyone. You'll see sort of the founding members team, but very much, they're looking to be inclusive of everyone in the industry in this. And also, in terms of data access, in doing so in these APIs to allow sort of openness in data as well. What this means for end users, which I think is important, obviously, with the discussions today, it's sort of breaking down those silos and proprietary lock-in. So through this openness, enabling people to have products from multiple vendors. This was talked about in the panel session yesterday, that you might have many different vendors and be able to have a single piece of software that can manage all those. That's sort of the vision of what this helps to promote. Ultimately, you can hope this reduces downtime and cuts costs. So that's very much sort of where it helps on the wallet, if you like. And for your customers, promote a better user experience in terms of sort of seamless integration, and hopefully help extend lifespans. Sustainability is a big topic in the industry. So being able to add products from different vendors without having to do a complete refit if you're changing vendors is I think very, very important. So we'll look at sort of some of the use cases. So the first one that I sort of alluded to before was in terms of that single pane of glass management. So this is a sort of snapshot from Excite's platform, but this is sort of showing the concept where you can have multiple vendors with a single software where you can manage all their devices from one place. And that's a sort of a tagline there of vendor agnostic monitoring. The sort of second example here is on cloud-to-cloud integration. So with promoting this openness and commonality in what the APIs support, you can make it easier to integrate to different cloud platforms like Salesforce, etc. here, which obviously helps with manageability. And actually, when I first sort of reviewed this slide and went through it with Little, I was like, great, this is kind of, we talk a lot about agentic AI. So agentic, this will help unlock agentic AI use cases. And that was actually a third one that we'd put in here to say, well, with that cloud-to-cloud integration, this really, with the openness and that commonality, it's really preparing to be able to get all your management software acting like sort of agents in the cloud. And this really, I think, helps bring that sort of agentic AI to Pro AV in promoting that interoperability. So if we kind of recap of where some of the sort of management systems are today and where we sort of see things going with this initiative. In terms of the current state, as sort of I mentioned before, you can often have a sort of vendor siloed, so you have a management system for each vendor you have. There can be different sort of functionality, different features. There's maybe some inconsistency. Ecosystems can come across as closed, and you sort of have partial visibility into different products. In terms of where sort of this is going in the interoperable future with that openness, you're sort of promoting that unified management layer. And as I sort of mentioned on the previous slides, I kind of see this as, with that openness and interoperability, you're really providing a foundation where you can bring in AI and automation into how you're sort of managing devices and environments. So I wanted to also spend a few minutes talking about what's actually sort of going on in this initiative. So I think the overarching goal and things is very honourable, and you could kind of look at technically what is an organisation sort of delivering. And I sit as a sort of advisor within the technical working group, and actually they've been executing quite impressively with PACE to put out a sort of set of guidelines. And I presented to the AVIXA Manufacturers Council on this a few weeks ago, and I think it's important to clarify here what the organization is providing is sets of guidelines and best practices. What they're not doing at this time is publishing very specific standards, or you might be familiar if you're in the standards world with technical recommendations, those sort of very detailed prescriptive things which you could, which you would raise questions of like compliance to, etc. This is more sort of sets of guidelines and best practices that the people who are joining are signing up to. What that means when I look at it as a sort of special interest group activity is they've been able to move quite quickly with pace to get these out, whereas anyone who's sat in a sort of standards organization to get your first document out probably takes you a couple of years, right? So this has been able to execute with pace, get their best practices out, and I think really that's calibrated nicely to the intent of this, of promoting openness and common best practices. You could say without some of the red tape that I've been used to in some standards groups. So what have they published so far? Started off by publishing like minimum device functionality, what's the sort of minimum sort of expectations from AV devices, and then importantly, what are some of the security guidelines? And this is where we provided a little bit of input here to say, well, what would be common in an IT system? And then, so I think it's important here to look at, and this is a lot of collection of what people know in terms of best practice in AV. I look at it from, what maybe do we add over time for IT? And so one of the sort of topics I've raised is sort of zero trust, which is a big topic in the Microsoft environment at the moment. So these are guidelines that are already published out there that you can review and look at. I've got some more links a bit later. In terms of roadmap, the next step was device sort of taxonomy, so categorization of devices. Actually, this has just been approved for publication, so that'll be going up very shortly. And then coming up next is to look at cloud interoperability, some best practices for cloud-to-cloud APIs, and then device ontology, the sort of minimum set of attributes and commands that devices should support. And again, as I said before, this is really in the spirit of guidelines. I think from listening to the technical working group, it's really people just collecting industry knowledge of what everyone's familiar with and writing it down, but it's kind of good to have that sort of common record, if you like. So if we talk a bit about how can you support this initiative? I think the overarching thing here is really championing that openness for AV and IT strategy. As I sort of talked to some of the founding members as we were deciding to join, I think one of their visions, which I think is kind of honorable, is that people will start to make this open API a requirement in RFQs and RFPs in the future, which is, I think certainly looking for this from your vendors, I think is important. Sharing feedback with with stakeholders of what's sort of important to you here. There's a nice quote here from Mark, who's one of the members as a consultant, sort of on sort of where he sees the importance of this, right? And he certainly see it from a future-proofing perspective, and really, and I think to some of the spirit of this AV-IT convergence, I see the industry moving to sort of software approaches. This is very much in support of like a software-defined ecosystem. So if you want to hear more about what the different sort of technical activities that are going on, there is a roundtable session coming up later in April, which is open for registration. So very much sort of recommend to come and listen to this. It's going to be some presentations, and then there's going to be breakouts on a deep dive on the different technical topics that I talked about before with the sort of members of the technical working group. If you want to read some of the sort of recommendations or see what's going on, there's a Discord channel where you can make comments. Actually, we've recently put this on GitHub as well, so you can see that's sort of where we're taking some of the comments and making contributions. And then, of course, there's a LinkedIn page where you can see some of the activity. I think, as I mentioned before, there's kind of a regular update of who are the new members who have joined the sort of Open AV Cloud initiative.